Alrighty then. Had a good time during both BYOBs. Things get a little raucous in there. Just joking around though. I joke around with my friends. If anybody was there was offended, let me know, and I'll tell you to go F yourself. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but today I'm going to talk about something relatively serious. It's about the situation over in Libya. Now, I did not personally detect or find any. The situation in Egypt. I mean, let's face it. The Muslim states over in the Middle East and stuff are just going crazy. I mean, they're going. I mean, people are flipping over cars and stuff. Now, a lot of people have said, well, that's a CIA influence or that's a globalist influence trying to topple a government to a government that's a little more friendly to a globalist agenda, and it makes sense. Yeah, it seems to make sense. I didn't hear about or see any evidence of CIA meanderings or whatever in Egypt, but I know that it wasn't the CIA or globalists that were flipping over cars. The people were legitimately sick of that freaking iron-fisted quasi-dictator. What the hell was his name? I forgot what his freaking name is. I can't remember. It's early in the morning, but I think it was Mossadegh. I can't remember. But at any rate, they were tired of him, you know. And just like the people are tired in Libya, the thing about these Middle Eastern countries is that you're going to find, if you want to go in there and start a rebellion and you get the people pissed off enough, you're going to find support for it. You're going to find support. It's just the way it is. Now, the thing I'm worried about is the civil unrest, not just the civil unrest, but the political turmoil happening here. Uh, let's talk about Libya for a second. Muammar Gaddafi has been imprisoning since he's kind of a law and order government type. He's a jerk, to be sure, but Libya, when you think about it, the countries that we're going into all have oil or some sort of natural resource that can be gleaned. We went into Afghanistan because of the poppies. I firmly believe that. We went into Afghanistan because of the poppies. Not just because of terrorists or Al Qaeda or anything like that. We went in because of the freaking poppies. So we went into Iraq because of the oil. This is what I think. And I'm a conservative guy. I vote, libertarian / Republican when I can. I like Ron Paul. I sort of kind of like Rick Perry, even though I think he might be influenced by the globalist. But he's done a lot for gun owners and stuff here in Texas. But I mean, I like who I like. I'm not a liberal guy. But I'm also not a war hawk either. I'm not a hawk. And if I were a president, I would, pull our guys home. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But if you look at now, you got Egypt, and they've got oil out the ass, and you look at Libya, and they've got oil. So in the countries where there's like genocide, like in Rwanda, and all sorts of stuff like that, we don't go in there. But you know why? Because there's no oil. There's nothing in it for us. No way for us to pay ourselves back. And here's another thing. The war protesters, when we were going into Iraq, the war protesters were in the streets, waving signs, blocking traffic, making statements. Celebrities were making statements. But now that their good friend Obama is dropping the bombs, it's okay. If you're a war protester and you legitimately despise war and you're not out there waving your arms and holding your signs, then fucking shame on you for being a hypocrite. Just because your boy is a Democrat, it doesn't make it okay for you to not be against the war. This war is every bit as corrupt and as false as the previous wars of the previous administration. Now, on to Libya. Okay, you got Muammar Gaddafi, who's been imprisoning terrorists because he's a law and order guy. He believes in law and order, and Libya should be able to trade with the rest of the world, and he wants to stay on good terms with the rest of the world so he can sell his product, which is oil. And he coughed up the remnant of any kind of nuclear or chemical program when we saw them go into Iraq, because he knew it was coming. When he saw America go into Iraq, he coughed up the remnant of any and all weapons of mass destruction. He said, because if they're going to use this as an excuse, I'm going to take that excuse away. But it turns out we're using another excuse. We're using rebels and stuff like that. And one of the first things, and I want this to burn in real good, one of the first things that the rebels did in Libya was establish a central international bank. Let me say that again. one of the first things the rebels did when establishing, in order to get recognized by the international community, was establish an international bank. Isn't it funny? Isn't it so freaking hilarious, fucking hysterical, that the axis of evil is comprised of people who have not allowed centralized globalist banks on their shores? Iran, up until now Libya, Iraq, Venezuela, and North Korea. Now, these guys are not nice people. Hugo Chavez is not a nice guy. He's arrogant. But you know what? Let me tell you something about Venezuela. They pay 23 cents a gallon for gasoline down there. They don't get paid as much as we do, but they pay, that which Venezuela has to offer, the best of that goes to the citizens first. That's their policy. That's like a form of nationalism. And they do not allow a Rothschild central bank to operate on their shores. They have a national bank that is ran by Venezuela and fuck all else. So I guess every cloud has its silver lining or something like that. I don't know how you put that. You see, like, Hugo Chavez is not a nice guy. But when you look at where he's coming from, things start to make a little bit more sense. Venezuela is going to be coming down soon. Syria is going to be coming down soon. Syria is another one that doesn't have a centralized bank as we know it, as they want it to be. So that's coming down too. They also have oil. So all these oil-rich nations, they're colonizing is what they're fucking doing. They're colonizing, but instead of creating a government that's run directly by the, it's not a nationalist or empirical colonization. It's a financial colonization. The banks are doing the colonizing, and they're using militaries like our own. It's so fucking sad. They're using militaries like our own, and as the muscle. It's just my opinion. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff to back it up, and that's just the way it is. But like I said, the Libyan Rebels, so-called, one of the first things they did to get recognized by the international establishment, by the UN and places like that, was establish a centralized bank. And here's another thing. Muammar Gaddafi, when he came upon this situation where he's being ousted and stuff like that, Hugo Chavez threw his hat and said, "I support Muammar Gaddafi." I mean, what would you do, man? Everybody else is selling out to this big evil thing, and there's like 5 or 6 of you left, and one of you starts to get snagged by something. Are you gonna grab him and try and pull him out if you can? And one of your buddies, it's like, it's just crazy. It's funny that the axis of evil. Let me say this again. This so-called axis of evil are the countries that do not have centralized banks. And that's it. That's what it's really all about. The final takeover. See, the United States already has that shit. People are worried about the United States being invaded and stuff like that. No, not unless things get really, really bad here. Not unless there's an overall, like, rebellion or something really, really terrible that happens here. Because we've already got the freaking Federal Reserve. That is a centralized globalist bank. Internationalist bank. It's under control of powers that are not American. China, I don't think China does too. Can somebody tell me in the comments section if China and Russia have Rothschild or centralized banks and stuff like globalist banks? Because I think that the Russians and the Chinese, one of the reasons they're so pissed off at America, and one of the reasons why they're pissed off at this whole scheme, is that they don't have the kind of financial scheme they do, and their commodities, their currency is backed by commodities, all of them, Russia and China, which is, I don't know, that's kind of crazy. I don't know if Russia and China have the globalist thing going on right now, or if they're like hardcore nationalists. Somebody in the comment section, please kind of tell me the difference on that, because I haven't researched that enough. Point me in the right direction. I was listening to Coast, and there was a global financial expert, and he acknowledged that there is an Illuminati, but he also says that the currency, the world reserve currency, instead of a global currency, they call them, I think the global currency was going to be called geo dollars. Just kind of like they got euros and they were going to call it maros. The global currency was going to be called geos. But Russia and China don't necessarily want that. This is according to this one guest on Coast to Coast. I worked a night shift, so I mean, there's nothing else to listen to. But and he said basically the next global reserve currency isn't going to be a global currency like the geo. It's going to be a Russian/Chinese backed, commodity backed currency that's going to purge. It's going to be a financial reboot, and it's going to purge of all this Rothschild, Illuminati, international bank bullshit. And there's still going to be, it's going to be a continuation of what we had before the Federal Reserve. Nationalist countries with, sovereign states and currencies, and each with their own currency. The only difference is that instead of the dollar being the big boy on the block, the ruble is going to be the big boy on the block. But it's going to be the same basic scheme. And the New World Order and this globalist government is going to be pushed back another couple of decades at least. That was the opinion. And it made sense to me. And I thought to myself, man, a lot of Americans aren't going to like that, aren't going to like Russian or Chinese characters on their money, and they're not going to like it. But it'll be a solid currency, a nationalist currency backed by commodities. I was just thinking out loud. But anyways, Libyan rebels established a Rothschild bank that has NWO globalist stink all over it. Okay, that's just what I wanted to say. I mean, this is the first time in a while that I've actually covered a hardcore article and what's going on in the world and stuff like that. But most of my videos have been just kind of responding to various stupid shit. But it's not just here on our shores, man. It's everywhere, and we're being used as the muscle. And one of the things they're doing to use us as the muscle is that they're using the globalist international media to sway public opinion here in the United States. Because without public opinion, the military will not, the politicians and the military will not respond correctly without our public opinion. So they need just enough support for these wars, and unfortunately, they're getting it from both sides. They're getting it from Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals alike, because the fucking liberals, the anti-war liberals, so-called, are not out there protesting the fucking war like they should be. Like I should be, for that fucking matter. I'm going to call myself a hypocrite on that, man. Like I should be protesting the fucking war. But unfortunately, the liberals, I have a job and a full-time job, and sometimes I work overtime, and the liberals that don't have jobs, they just collect welfare checks, and they can become professional protesters. You're not doing your job, which is to protest. All right, that's about all I got. Take it easy.